Hello, everyone. Welcome to Christian Hangout number 38. Can't believe it's 38 because I've realized I've even been doing these less frequently, but I can still remember like half of that would be 19, and it's like that's more than twice the length of this show ago. But yeah, with me again, we have LUMEN Saul, we have Moose Norseman, we have William Scott, and we have Thomas Jones, all returning from previous times. Good to have you guys with us, and I'm your host, Ian, of course. So, how's it going, everybody?
Pretty good.
Good.
I came here for two reasons. The first reason is to prove that I'm brilliant. The second reason is to Deus Vult, and we all know that that the former is not going to happen. So might as well get going on the latter.
Yep. We all know you're not. Oh, sorry.
I had to start it off with a lame joke. Sorry.
And I'm all out of brilliant.
There you go.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
All out of brilliant. Okay. So we were talking a little bit before we went live about some ideas we have, and I mentioned how it can be really distressing when you realize how much pause has crept into the church, and this is probably not a new topic because we've probably discussed this in previous times, but if anybody reads the blog Faith and Heritage, they frequently have articles showing how within, I guess, the Reformed evangelical churches, there's a lot of people accepting ideas, or they're not fighting ideas because, the usual stuff like they don't want to be called racist, they're afraid of being seen as anti-Semitic or whatever, and they let these ideas creep in. You can see how things are declining, and just today there was an article on Faith and Heritage that spurred these thoughts in me, talking about some rapper guy named Lecrae. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Yeah, I don't really.
Who you're talking about.
I only really know about him because of Faith and Heritage, because they talk about how he's this rapper and he's a black guy, and how he was like sort of like I guess he was one of these guys that they sell to the youth because that's what all the kids like, this hippity hop music.
Yeah, I believe he's what they call
a
a Christian rapper.
Yeah, he's supposedly a Christian rapper.
Sort of like, Christian marijuana or Christian pornography, apparently.
Well, I did listen to DC Talk when I was a kid. They're not too bad. They actually, I think...
Christ bud. Oh, sorry.
But,
Hey, DC Talk, at least they tried. They worked with the Voice of the Martyrs a lot and stuff like that. But even then, it wasn't straight up rap. I mean, they had Toby Mac rapping for parts of their songs, but it wasn't straight up rap.
Yeah, and Kevin and Mike would sing, and he just fill in the gaps with a little rap verse or whatever. Yeah, they did have kind of a weird hybrid of genres there, but it was the 90s. But yeah, I mean, apparently this guy, Lecrae, for a long time, he's sort of I guess they said the term mascot is how he's described. Basically, he's saying he's leaving the Christian rap world and he's embracing black liberation theology, essentially. And he doesn't want to play for white people anymore, essentially. So, I mean, you could just say this guy's one individual and he's he's got his own issues. But I think that what it made me think of is just the I guess in the racialist Christian circles, there's the Acts 17:25, where he talks about how God created the nations and created their times and places so that they would seek God. And I'm thinking, does this prove it or not? I mean, people are naturally going to seek God from among their own people, and they're going to seek ways to worship from within their own folkways and their own traditions, and when you try to mix it, it just kind of hurts everybody, because then they don't really have a coherent standard. And I mean, it's just sad to see how so many people are afraid to even criticize this guy because one of the things in this article is they talked about how this guy was basically becoming just joining these like fake Christian Marxist hybrids that call themselves Christians but are really just political agitation, and how John Piper, who they've taken to task several times for being a cuck, basically, he's not criticizing this guy for essentially being an apostate. He's saying, well, I'm glad he's being thoughtful, and I think that he's important that we have these conversations and that we think about these things, and essentially undermining his own legitimacy as an authority. So, but it's just amazing to me because having grown up as an evangelical, it's hard to believe that these things are happening, and like I couldn't imagine things getting this bad, and how even the churches are accepting these Marxist tenets.
I had a friend, not exactly on that subject, but he's an Anglican with me, former Catholic, and we were, for some reason we were talking about mestizos, and then he was talking about gang culture, and then he said, oh, and some of them, somehow, so those that are signaling hard as Catholics that have rosaries on and stuff, he was sort of seeing this as kind of a valid expression. And yet, I mean, there's no way he would accept a white expression of Christian culture that's particularly based on that. So yeah, it's similar to this. And yet, I mean, I suppose they're not going to behave in ways that we, these other ethnic groups, they're not, I mean, quite obviously they're going to form and do things that we don't quite grasp or understand, or that don't kind of make sense to us. And maybe in their initial struggle to isolate themselves, same as us. I mean, people find the way we talk about white identity to be offensive and to be unchristian. I mean, I think it's kind of a consistent thing. There will be some misunderstanding. I mean, hopefully, we will have wise people in the church, in the umbrella large church, that's connecting these various groups as a Christian body, that can understand that unity in Christ means true diversity, unified in Christ, rather than a monocultural cult that just insists on its ubiquity in every corner of the globe, same as neoliberalism and nuclear grade capitalism. I mean, these things want to completely wash all differences away. And so, yeah, I don't know. We're going to see differences that we don't like. They don't like the differences that we're beginning to express. So it's and not everybody is going to be at that kind of top level of universal conversation. Most of us will be participating in our own lives within our own kind of ethnic Christian communities, at least ideally. That's my ideal.
Well, I mean, one thing, since you've brought up the Anglican Church, always a fun topic of conversation, let me tell you. I've noticed in a lot of them, they're really pushing, Amerindian identity and like folkways and that, and it's really kicked off, since we've had here in Canada this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I guess it was 2 years ago now, or a year ago. I can't remember. And so I've seen that. You'll go to churches where there are very few Indians, and yet you might see like a mask or something. And I've heard talks of like some type of national, quote unquote, Aboriginal church. I mean, I don't know that exactly, but there is definitely that kind of globalizing, kind of monocultural thing on the one hand, but on the other, there's a willingness to accept a certain amount of, I guess, folk traditions, nationalism, however you want to put it. But it's obviously they're only applying it to certain people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to any other group but us.
Yeah, basically, or at least that's how it seems.
So ours is supposed to be the
Anglican.
overriding culture or something.
And it's a universalism that's radically different from the understanding of universalism up till recent times, and it's a universalism rather than considering, you know, the various nations of the world, the various peoples of the world, you know, in their rightful place, you know, in their in many cases in their ancestral homelands from time immemorial. You know, instead considering them all thrown together, and it's kind of a foolish way to go about uniting people. It's clearly a very unnatural way, and I think we've discussed this on here before, that you can, in addition to Ian's quote from Acts, there are several. Actually, the guys on the Godcast did a good sort of analysis on the idea of the nation and
Yeah, it was a good episode.
peoples. Yeah, but you know, even beyond that, just looking at, you know, the story of the Tower of Babel. So, you know, where, you know, in my church, in the Catholic Church, you know, I mean, I go to the Latin Mass, and therefore I escape a lot of the worldly infection that's afflicted the Catholic Church these days. But you know, there's still a bit of that. You know, trying to consider everyone the same, you know, and I think it was Thomas that just said it. It's true that, you know, it's considering everyone. It's considering the you know, the particular background, habits, etc. of everyone, except for one group, and we know who that is. And you know, again, even though I attend the Latin Mass, you know, I still have to hear, you know, if there's a letter that comes down from the diocese, the bishop or archbishop, I still have to hear about how we have to watch out for those Nazis, those white supremacists, and it's not only tiresome and vexing and really inimical to you know, the Christian life, but it's just really foolish. You know, how the again, I'm thinking about my church, you know, how the bishops are just blithely, or they're pretending to be blithely unaware of the realities of you know, throwing people together this way, and we can come together and worship and do that in unity, do that in brotherhood, but that's usually where it ends, and that's just normal. Like, you know, the Hispanics go to their Hispanic communities. You know, the few, very few, very few in my case, Black people. You know, they'll actually, now that I think of it, most of the Black people I've met in the Catholic Church live in white communities. But you guys get the picture. So it's a particularly troublesome concept of universalism that we're dealing with here, and very different from past conceptions of it.
I think that some of it we think has to do with the church, and we see in the church, but it's a reflection of a larger reality about the United States, in that the United States is not a coherent nation. It's an empire of many nations. It doesn't have a coherent overarching culture. So, you know, like in Orthodoxy, typically each, you know, country has its own church. The Bulgarian Orthodox Church, the Georgian Orthodox Church, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, blah, 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 whatever. And obviously in America, we don't have that. And there's been movement towards that, but you don't have an overarching culture. You don't have an overarching nation. You have, I mean, I've seen studies where they claim to have as many as 7 distinct nations in the United States. You take somebody from Boston and you put them in the Florida Panhandle, and you know, it becomes quickly apparent that it's not the same culture or the same nation.
Look at my cousin Vinny. You ever seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Not for a million years.
Oh yeah, my cousin Vinny. It's about these 2 kids from New York. One's Italian and one's Jewish, and they drive down to the South and they get charged with committing a murder in a case of mistaken identity. And so the Italian guy calls his cousin to represent them, and he's kind of well, it's a good movie. You should see it, but it just basically shows how these like New Yorkers are so out of place in the South, and there's a lot of funny stuff that comes from that. But it's like what you're saying, like they are both American. They're all Americans there, but they come from totally different cultures, and you can see how even different regions are completely different.
Yeah, and you'll see the American churches, you know, and again, this just reflects the permeation in ecclesiastical life, ecclesiastical administration, etc., of worldly concerns. You know, you'll see these churches; they're reaching out, you know, to. In some cases it is virtue signaling. In others, I think it's, you know, well, we got to do something. You know, we're kind of, you know, terra incognito here, and in other cases, you know, I think it's just it's a sincere effort to extend Christian charity. But you see them reaching out to groups, and you know, where I'm from, I see a lot of that being extended to Hispanics, and it speaks to the, you know, the atomization, the balkanization, you know, and but there's very little outreach and concern, you know, for the original ethnic stock, you know, racial stock of this country, and this is bound to cause problems. You know, it's a and it's a pity. You know, I mean, it's you know, it's to be expected. I mean, this is just the reality of the times in which we live. But again, you know, no one seems to be even thinking about the Tower of Babel. You know, the lessons we could learn.
Yeah, but another part of it is, you know, you said the founding stock, and there's this, I think, a tendency to lump a lot of people into that, and assume that they're the same. You know, where I live, it's all Germans and Norwegians. Everything's very orderly, but it's very different than, you know, say New York City, where it's full of Italians and Irish. You know, and overall, yes, this country pulled a huge amount from England, but there are definitely regions and packets where that's different. And when we look at national churches in the United States, they look at an overall overarching picture rather than seeing that, I guess.
Well, that's why I corrected myself like mid-sentence. I was like, founding ethnic stock or racial stock, because I thought of that. You're right. You're absolutely right. What I'm getting at is that, the same way that there are Mexican, Dominican, Puerto Rican, et cetera, Hispanics, but they're all generally seen as Hispanics. It's there's a tendency, just like in the rest of, just as a reflection of the secular realities here, there's a tendency to to forget about white people, and when there is criticism about any sort of discord, racial discord, it's generally at least intimated towards white people, if not explicitly stated.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking that even then, like, there's all these Hispanic outreach things, but try calling a Cuban a Puerto Rican or a Puerto Rican a Mexican and see how that works out for you. So I mean, all of these groups are tended to look at in this country at a macro lens. Oh, white, Hispanic, black, but people don't generally, by and large, self-identify as white, Hispanic, black. They self-identify as, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Mexican, I'm Norwegian, I'm German, and if you've got enough time in the United States and enough different things that you can't trace it back to a country anymore, then you're like, well, I'm just American. But
yeah, and this just speaks to the wrongheadedness of where we end up when we just completely do away with the idea of nation. And I mean, there was no one today will know about this or think about this. I mean younger people, unless they seek it out, unless they're intellectually curious. But I mean, there were plenty of, like you mentioned, the Irish and the Italian. There was some strong pushback, even though these people are white. There was some strong pushback, and this is just the same way that diversity ends up largely, in neighborhoods, in politics, in culture. It ends up causing conflict. I think it can, when it's dealt with in the church, it kind of it divides people, and it's sad, because this is our, this is what we're doing, while we're here on earth in the hopes of getting to heaven.
Wow, we're all meeting at the same time there.
Yeah, we are pretty good. This is totally a tangent, but I've noticed that we're all pretty good at muting when we're not talking. It kind of triggers me a little bit when I'm listening to a Hangout, and it's like, you see all these people, they're not muting, and you just hear this background noise and people cutting into each other.
Who is urinating?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just giving an example.
Yeah, I got a little one here that's talking at me, so I'm trying to make sure I keep it muted most of the time. I'm getting ready to haul him off to the bathtub.
Good sounds, Moose. Those are good sounds.
Yep. Maybe one day I'll be able to have sounds like that, but that's not today.
Yeah, it was making me smile too when I heard it. It was reminding me of how when I first came back to the church and I was going to Novus Ordo services, there's like this cry room in the back, where people take their kids, because they cry, and it actually kind of used to get on my nerves. And like nowadays, like I love it. I love hearing kids in the church, because these people are having kids and they celebrate the family.
That reminds me of one of the things that my wife and I have loved the most since we've been going to the Orthodox Church is that we can put the boy down and let him walk and crawl and walk around church with him and just keep him from going in certain places, and nobody minds. Nobody even bats an eye. There's kids crawling all over the place because, of course, almost everybody's standing the entire time, so there's plenty of room for them to crawl around. And there's none of this expectation that you're going to keep your kid absolutely silent through the service. If they start singing along and they can't speak words yet, nobody's upset about that at all.
Yeah, it's true in my experience with Orthodoxy as well. So for how many people here have kids? Moose and William, anybody? I know. Do you have any kids, Thomas?
No, I don't have any kids.
Okay, so the childless outnumber the fathers here.
Just my dog. But I'm not one of those people that says, "Oh, it's my fur baby."
You're a fur daddy, Lumen.
Yeah, I'm a dog dad. Yeah, I mean, it's my dog. I'm her master. I'm not her dad.
I have my cartoon characters that I draw sometimes. That's kind of like having children in a way. So
I consider all of you my children.
That's
Even
a pretty
William's
authoritarian relationship you have with your dog there, Lumen.
Yep.
Yep.
You might become another Hitler if you don't stop that.
Yes, you just refer to them as your non-human friend or companion. Of course, they can't make you dinner or take out the trash or.
Well, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm going way off topic here, but I've tweeted, photos of my dog with, having caught all sorts of stuff, and I've pointed out that once the Kali Yuga is in full swing, my dog will keep me fed with fresh rodents harvested from the earth. She's always catching something.
Oh, so you're set for the collapse of civilization, then.
Pretty much. Yep.
Hunting rodents.
She got a raccoon a couple weeks ago. She's always going after the coyotes. She's pretty fearless. But again, we're way off topic here. Sorry, Ian.
What is our topic exactly?
I don't know, but it's not Lumen at Saul's dog and her adventures in the woods. I'm pretty sure it's not that.
Why I came.
Well, to keep us off topic, I have a 10-month go of my pants leg.
A 10-month-old thing?
Or sorry, a 10-week-old puppy. Sorry, not 10-month-old.
Uh-oh.
Right about the time you started talking about dogs, this one decided that he wanted to fight with my pants.
You could tell. He's jealous of the other dogs being talked about.
Yeah, apparently he's trying to keep up with Lumen's dog's adventures here.
Did you see that? This is another totally frivolous discussion here, but did you see that there's some article saying like gendering dogs is a form of animal abuse or something like that? And
No,
that was bound to happen. I mean, they're just running out. They're just running out of road really fast,
Yeah.
So are we going to have transgender dogs? Is that the goal here?
I guess so. Or somebody made a funny tweet about it. They put a screenshot of this article that says, "Who's a good gender neutral canine companion?" Or
Gender neutral
dogs
canine
are already-
companion.
what was that?
Most male dogs are already eunuchs, so there's already some
Yeah, that's true.
gendering going on there.
Thanks, Bob Barker.
I wonder how many people get that.
Yeah. quite ironic that his
The
name.
price is right.
Yep. Don't worry, folks. I'll put a link to it in the description so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm sure it's up on YouTube somewhere.
Important historical referencing.
What's that?
Very important historical background.
Yes. Let's see what the text chat's up to. I jokingly said that my address is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., and because somebody is trying to dox us. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't look like you guys are saying much. Johannes the Sugarman says, I would rather hang with my trad seminary friend who is Hispanic than a white SJW. In my parish, most minorities are pretty trad. Yeah, I think we can all agree that hanging with SJWs is not pleasant. That they pretty much just are insane, feral people who destroy. Well, that was very interesting.
Well, I'll say this: the minorities that, and I'm not making a supremacist argument, you know, but the minorities I know and that I've encountered who are traditional Catholics like myself, they're pretty much, you know, whether they're consciously doing it or not, they're pretty much European in character, you know, and how they live and how they think, because that's pretty much what traditional Catholicism is. I mean, it's a it is a, you know, in spite of the, you know, the very imaginative and insightful accusations of what is it, kike on a stick worship, whatever it is, you know, in spite of that.
Use that term around here, please.
Oh, well, I apologize. I'm quoting people who use that term, but
I know, but it's still pretty blasphemous. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. But I'm kind of making fun of people who use it. But
yeah,
in any event, it's a European. You know, it was, you know, the mantle of Christianity was taken on by Europeans, and it's a very, it resonates with the European character. So I do notice that with minorities who are traditional, and it's a, again, you know, as I mentioned in the text chat, you know, this is just an issue that most nations never had to deal with. You know, there was never any such thing, you know, as nationalism, or you hear the term race idolatry. These things just weren't an issue because they never had to be, and it's it is an issue now, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you know what you just said there kind of raised a question in my head. I mean, you mentioned how a lot of the non-white Christians, you know, are in some ways more European in their ways, and it made me wonder, like, do you think it's possible that Christianity, like what we think of as like European ways, in many ways are just Christian ways, and that's like the kind of like those who embrace Christ are going to find themselves becoming more like what the European people are, or traditionally are, in terms of how they see the world, in terms of how they view humanity and things like that?
I think to a great extent, yes. I mean, look at pre-Christian European, quote, civilization. Europe became great because of Christianity, not because of anything else.
Yeah, it does. It does. this is anecdotal. This is just my experience, but from what I've seen, the people, this applies to whites as well, who truly endeavor to live a traditional Catholic life, Christian life, which really is it is nothing more than what was just considered normal, for the vast majority of our history, but those people, I think, sort of reflect the what we often consider to be the kind of the hallmark traits of a classical traditional European society. The high trust, the low crime, the the politeness, the push for virtue, all of these things which have in recent times been turned against us. And so yeah, I mean, and a lot of the people, I think, and again, I'm not making any sort of racial supremacist argument here. I mean, I just happen to think that it's just normal that people of the same race, live together in the same society. But I have noticed that a lot of the minorities that come to this, they kind of come to embody these traits, and I think, I can't say this conclusively, but I think that they're often outliers, among their communities, among their fellows.
Yep.
I remember once reading a study a few years ago, and it was comparing Coptic Christians with Muslim Egyptians, and it found that the Copts generally, they scored better, and basically, everything you could think of, they were more educated, there was less crime rates, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it does have some influence, but to what extent, I really don't know.
And the Copts are, the Copts do come from Aryan stock, if I'm correct. I mean, they're the original. Maybe I don't know, maybe Proto-European, but they're the original people of.
Yeah, I don't know how Aryan they are exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, but they're certainly the first inhabitants there. That's for sure.
Well, I've heard that when people talk about how North Africa used to be Christian, that it was also like the kind of stock there was more white than it is now.
Well, probably. I mean, it was a part of the Roman Empire for a long time. I'm sure there was quite a bit of movement of people from Europe, settlers and that.
Well, it just kind of fits in with, when you look at race, going from, say, I don't know, Scandinavia down to the Sahara, or I don't know, Somalia. It's a gradient, and the people in the southern Mediterranean and the Levant, they'll have kind of they're in between,
Yeah, there's always some gradient, I guess.
But I mean, speaking of the Copts, I actually got to know a few years back
Your local police officer.
Oh, that was a long time ago. No, I got to know a Coptic Christian, and he was, he was very devout, super devout, extremely intelligent. He was, I believe he was a psychiatrist or a psychologist, maybe. I don't know. He had a PhD, and he looked. You know, I remember him looking kind of like perhaps he had come from, you know, one parent being Italian and maybe the other being Arab, but he acted very, very European, and he was, you know, a first-generation immigrant. You know, he and part of his family, you know, were fleeing Egypt, you know, from the Muslim Brotherhood, and he, you know, he was, you know, we never got into much racial discussions, but you know, he clearly had a resentment, you know, that his nation, you know, he had a understanding of where his nation had come from, and he resented, you know, what had happened, and that, you know, even though, you know, Copts were, you know, they accepted that they had been conquered, and, you know, did their best to get along, you know, they're still persecuted. So it is, you know, there is, I think, a reason that Christianity flourished in Europe, and you know, and then was spread from there.
Yeah, that's a big question that I guess probably has never really been studied. We're sort of the first. Maybe it has. Maybe I just don't know the literature, but we're sort of the first generation to kind of be really confronted with this question, and then, you know, so then the question becomes, I mean, obviously, Christianity is for all nations, unless we're going to find a means of truncating the meaning of that phrase, that it actually refers to, you know, nations of a region or something. But yeah, but then Christianity, as we know it, obviously flourished in the West, but we do have Eastern Christianity. I suppose not significant. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, say there's no difference between the East and the West. There are big differences, and in some ways, even in kind of transcendental development and spiritual development, the East is far more mystical, which is really kind of more my disposition, though I do definitely get hung up in the cerebral kind of Western. The Occidental stuff is sort of been my tradition, but that's because we've been dealing with the Reformation, we've been dealing with the wranglings of the church since, and those leading up to it, which does sort of suit a certain kind of Germanic and Anglo-Saxon kind of disposition. So it pretty, you know, hard to tell, how do you extricate those things? You know, what is cultural, what is, obviously Christianity fit us well, it suited us well, or we wouldn't have adopted it. But it will, as I was saying before, be manifest quite differently in other places. I mean, it's been in Ethiopia for a long time. I don't know much about, I know they have some excellent sort of iconography, but I don't know much about what Ethiopian Christianity is like.
Well, I have an anecdote about, you know, I've attended Mass elsewhere, and I'll give one example. Attending Mass in the Philippines, and, you know, it was wonderful. I really liked it. You know, there was it was a Novus Ordo service, but the atmosphere was it was very reverent. You know, it was very similar to what I see at the extraordinary form of the Mass here in the U.S. and I was very impressed by how serious people take their faith there, and and they're really decent people, and of course the Philippines had 400 years of colonization by the Spaniards, but it's a very vibrant, and I don't mean that in the dumb, vernacular of there's more crime in your neighborhood and it's getting vibrant. But, it was very vibrant in the sense that it was people were genuinely excited about their faith, and these are obviously very, very poor people. Now while saying that, I'll also point out that I stood out like a sore thumb because I'm white. I was the only white guy there, and
you're Irish. You're not white.
Yeah, it was I was kind of it wasn't like people were staring at me the whole time, but it was clear, not that anyone was trying to make me feel unwelcome, but it was clear that I was joining something different, and something different was kind of entering into what these people are doing at Mass, and also there was less of the what I've come to expect in the homily, of the sort of the, I don't know, Thomas Aquinas sort of the intellectual exposition, and at least presenting the intellectual side of the gospel and how it applies to our lives, and of course I didn't I don't speak Tagalog, and the people I was with helped me out, and it's interesting, but people in the Philippines, they just throw English into Tagalog. So like the priest was giving a homily about how you need to become like a child to enter heaven, and like in the middle of speaking Tagalog, you hear something like childlike, Hindi, childish, but anyway, the point I'm making is it was great, and these people are serious about their Christianity, and these people are they struggle from day to day, but there is it came there from Europe. I think these people happen to be receptive to Christianity, but again, this is in their own country. If you get a large Pinoy community here in the U.S., then they'll associate with each other, and eventually they might end up having their own parish. And it's again, I'm repeating myself. It's something that we just kind of have to deal with for right now.
So we got to keep the faith strong for the future generations.
I've started trolling atheists on Twitter for fun these days.
Oh, really? Do they all descend on you like a swarm?
Well, I've gone to a few, followed down some threads or whatever, and then found just these kind of snippets. Actually, one guy just kind of last Sunday, I posted something about our reading, the epistle reading, and this guy just comes out, swinging. I have any idea who he is or where he's from. He's just going around just bashing on Christians for whatever. So I just, me and Anthony Gray there, we took him for a good long run most of Sunday and then part of the next day. It was nuts, but it was just kind of fun. Like these people are just so profoundly, like he's still stuck back in the kind of early 2000s. Like I kind of realized, I don't know if you guys remember those days, like we were kind of being attacked hard by the the New Atheist, right?
I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, people with their fresh copy of the Blind
God
Watchmaker or
God
something.
is not great or whatever. Yeah.
I'm gonna make you a new avatar of a fedora and a crosshairs.
I'll put it on when I go out doing my special.
I'll do that right now. No, for Twitter. You know,
yeah. That's what I mean. I'll put it on when I'm in that mode.
Okay, yeah. Kind of like your Bill Marchand, you know, temporary.
Yeah, be awesome. And these people haven't grown at all because there is no growing in what they're doing. And I'd say a lot of us some people were pretty devastated by this kind of new attack, and you know, it was mostly attacks on our, but really what it's done is it's managed to purify people's faith, which is what happens, because the faith is actually something dynamic. It's something real and living. And maybe a lot of the stuff that we were, you know, thought was essential was actually dross, needed to be dropped away. So you go back and you deal with these guys and they don't even know how to cope with you. Because I remember doing a bit of that back in those days, and I probably held too many of their premises still. So they were able to draw me in to what they're doing because my faith was not what it should be. It was not what it could be. But
plus, I'm sure it was. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Just I mean, that's so tired and old now, isn't it? You know, these fedora tippers. I mean, I'm sure he had nothing new to bring to the table, and you could just feel like, okay, whatever. Heard this a million times.
Yeah, nothing whatsoever new. It was so boring.
I remember Arjun did a video called "Responding to Atheist Copy Pasta," where some guy was spamming his comments with these like same talking points. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, that's what this guy was doing. He was posting these huge info dumps of you know, just things he'd either made himself or found somewhere that were, you know, longer than Twitter, but they were all just appalling. And then he would just jump from subject to subject. But it was still fun. I had a good time. And I've been doing it with a couple of others now since. But most of them won't take. Like they're just they're not like they used to be. This guy was a recently converted atheist. He was 60. And he had only kind of, you know, finally really become an atheist. So he had kind of the fervor of a neophyte. So he was. And I said, wow, this is like I burnt him saying, well, it's like a trip down memory lane. I feel like it's 2005. He didn't like that so much.
It is sad though to see somebody apostatize at that age. Or I don't know what he was before, if he was devoutly religious or what.
Never was, but he called himself Roman Catholic.
Oh. Okay.
Although all of his talking points basically were against Protestant fundamentalism, so I didn't. Yeah. I assumed it was an ex Fundy, not a.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking of that the other day. Like I remember that, and I actually was an atheist back then, and I, you know, very briefly, you know, because you feel like whatever, you feel like you're, you know.
I tried atheism once, but I didn't inhale.
You gotta, yeah. I mean, it was, and this happens to so many of us, unfortunately. You know, there's when society is nihilistic, people end up in the most, you know, destructive, pernicious, idiotic, whatever. Ideological worldviews, but you know, because at first it was like, okay, I guess I'm kind of edgy now, you know, and you know, people, you know, most people aren't like this, and you know, so I kind of, you know, found a couple of, you know, online, you know, people that were also atheists, and I noticed that, you know, I mean, these are like, I guess like the proto fedoras, you know, like the, and I thankfully, it just felt, you know, not that I was particularly good at debating or whatever, but it felt wrong, you know, to, you know, just have this supercilious, attitude of, oh God, you stupid people and your sky daddies and what, it just felt wrong. And I could never, shake my respect for the church because I knew too much. I knew our history and I never, I was an atheist for about a decade, and I never stopped, searching for God, and you'll find God if you keep looking. But I was thinking the other day about the difference between back then and now, because back then, evangelical churches, fundamentalist churches were seen as just like, I don't know, like, Ming the Merciless or something, just like they're so draconian, and like now, they're all, they're, they signal against the alt-right, and half of them have, women ministers, and, gay marriage. It's amazing, and it's even, this recent phenomenon, short-lived, on YouTube, where the fedoras, kind of had to find a new nemesis because SJWs are kind of, an endangered species these days, and they decide they're going to go after the alt-right, and the vanguard was Kraut and T, and he made a couple of videos, and he hasn't been seen, like over a month, and it's like fedoras are, you got to feel kind of bad for them, almost. It's like they're quintessentially rebels without a cause right now.
Yeah, plus a lot of their I don't know how we want to call them, false prophets or whatever, are being taken to task now because they dare to speak out against the religion of peace, as it were. So they're they're behind the times on that one.
Who are you talking about, Thomas?
Well, wasn't Dawkins and that other guy? I can't remember, but he was speaking out. Yeah, Sam Harris. I remember they've both come out and said about, Islam really isn't a religion of peace, this, that, and the other thing, and they've gotten into a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
at least on social media. I mean, I don't know, but
yeah, these guys still that I've been having smackdowns with still hold that anti-Muslim thing because they're anti. They honestly believe that if the whole world was atheist, that we'd all live in a happy life in a scientific paradise. People were healed, and
that reminds me of this atheist guy I used to engage with online a lot. How he'd always throw out these phrases like, "Religion has been the source of more wars and deaths than all their things combined," or something. And somebody once said to him, "That's a very bold statement. Can you prove that?" And of course, he had nothing to back it up. It was just funny because that guy was always going around saying, like, "Show me the evidence of this. Show me the evidence." And then when somebody turned it on him, he had no response. Sorry, did I interrupt you there?
No. No, I was just going to say they always do that. That's the one thing, and they always post. It'll be some kind of lame meme with that written, and then it'll have like a picture of the World Trade Center or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, I do think that in my experience, like, I think I talked about this with the LUMEN or somebody privately once recently, but I have a coworker who, I don't know if he's a fedora tipper per se, but he seems to have a distaste for religion. But I did talk with him about it a bit, and he did kind of admit that he thinks Islam is a lot worse than other religions, that he admits that a lot of Christians are nicer people than, whereas Islam is a very dangerous force, and destructive force. So I think most people, even people who are not favorably disposed toward any kind of religion, they can see that if they're honest with themselves. And I mean, on the subject of guys like Dawkins and them, like I think even they've said things like that. Like I think Bill Maher a while back was comparing Christianity to Islam, and he was saying like, well, these Christians don't, threaten to kill me and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you notice that?
Well, it's almost like, you look at, I don't know, last 200 years, maybe even going back to Martin Luther. It's almost like we have to kind of go back in reverse. It's like, up until we had whatever critical mass it was of Muslims living in Western societies, Muslims were no big deal. It wasn't a big deal, and it's not enlightened. It's not progressive. To look down on brown people because they believe differently than you, and but for and this is a comfortable society. If you lived in the Balkans, 400 or 500 years ago, and you knew that time of the year was coming around when the Ottoman Turks, come to, grab some white kids for the Janissaries. You knew, unequivocally that you do, feel, enmity, fear, whatever, about these people, and we kind of have to, I guess, just go through the process of, seeing just how destructive and foolish, the deterioration of these simple precepts, which sustained our ancestors, has been for us, and to slowly, well, it might be sudden, actually, go in reverse, go in the other direction. And I would also briefly apply that to, having Jews in our society. I mean, there was for a long time just at least with the Catholic Church, a simple understanding that, you're not allowed to hurt the Jew, and the Jew isn't allowed to hurt your society. And if they, transgress that, then they would get kicked out. But I mean, this again, it's just a simple acknowledgement that cohesion and safety in a community is dependent on, a widespread acceptance of certain norms, certain mores, certain rules, and if you don't agree with them, you there's always been the village atheist, and it was kind of an anomaly, but you don't make waves, and the more recent fascinations with freedom, with liberty and individualism, these just corrode the fabric of what holds a society together.
Well, I'm going to take advantage of this lull. I need to leave and say some prayers with the little one and such, so I may come back later, but probably not.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming, and definitely saying some prayers with the little one is more important than what we're doing here.
So I hope you guys have a good conversation. Like I said, I might be back later, but we'll see.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Moose. If you do come back, we're glad to see you, and if not, have a good night.
God bless, Moose.
Night.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Miss.
Take care.
Yeah. It's interesting how, like, right before he left, his little icon had the mute thing pop up on it. I don't know if that's some sort of default or what, or if that just shows that the sound is not transmitting anymore. I don't know. I guess you guys who are listening to this and not participating in it probably couldn't see that, but it was just something I noticed. I'm a very curious person.
Yeah, the amount of things that I don't notice would stagger most people.
Well, I'd notice things. Well,
I used to be better. I used to, you know, like, even when I didn't want to, I've noticed lots of things.
well, I mean, noticing random things is not necessarily I mean, it just depends on what you happen to be looking at. Like, you can look at really mundane things and then notice something odd about them if you happen to be looking for it. I remember.
Absolutely, yeah.
I remember
Especially as an artist.
Especially, oh, as an artist, yeah. I remember many years ago when Austin Powers was big. There was a movie where Heather Graham was his sidekick, and we were at some friend's house. My family was, and we were watching that movie on TV. And one guy noticed about Heather Graham. He says, "She has a really large forehead." And the other guy's like, "How do you notice this stuff?" It was just funny. I never noticed Heather Graham does have a relatively large forehead.
Well, now I'm gonna have to look this up now. Listen myself.
Conquering the important issues.
But look at it in
Yes.
Austin Powers. Maybe it'll be more prominent there.
Yeah, she does. Wow. Look at that.
Yeah.
The things people notice.
We're going to have to post a link to Heather Graham's large forehead. Maybe that'll be the title of this episode. Heather Graham with a large forehead.
Now I know I never look at the group chat. It takes too much, distracts you totally from what's going on in the Hangout.
It does. Like, some of the silences come because I'm typing something in there. But
and young people flatter themselves that they can do all this multitasking. Oh, Lumen must be an authority. He has higher clearance.
Oh yeah, I can give you moderator privileges if you want, William.
Oh, that's what it is. I'm not very. I'm intemperate though. I'm not moderate.
Oh.
Yes, I'm up for canonization from Pope Ian. I just need two more people from the text chat to lie. I mean, testify that testify that my interactions with me have caused miraculous changes in their life. Changes that are good. Changes that are good. I should point out.
Oh,
changes that are wanted and beneficial.
I guess that would be true.
I just made you a moderator, William. So if you want to post links in the chat, you can do that.
I got the power. Yeah, your initial question's a good one. I mean, I suppose we talk. I don't think it matters that we talk about the same things over again because we never talk about them the same way. This was a complaint the guys at TRS went through at one point where they said we're talking about the same stuff. He says no, but every time we talk about it a little different, we're expanding on and purifying or simplifying our work. But you were saying that just the challenge of excuse me, let me clear my throat. The challenge of the world and Christianity. I mean, I know it's probably, obviously it is more difficult as a young man because it was more difficult for me when I was a young man. I wish I had been more overtly faithful and overtly strong in my faith. But mind you, I was also spent a lot of my young Christian life looking for a church that made sense to me, or at least looking for a church where my real Christian faith could make sense. I'm not, complained about it before. I'm not always particularly thrilled, especially when the Anglican Journal shows up once a month. I sometimes shudder at the church that I am in.
I know it well.
It's pretty. It's a pretty hurting rag.
Sometimes you got to read it though when you're, the day's been going too good, and you just need to be, you need to be triggered.
Do you get the network stuff in the Anglican Planet? Do you ever?
That Anglican Planet doesn't sound familiar.
Oh, you should look it up. I think it's still out. I haven't read it in quite a few years, but back in like 2006, I was reading it. It's sort of the Orthodox, Anglican Orthodox. It's still going to be not quite where we are, but it's certainly, I don't know what they've done.
A little better than seeing haggard old lesbians on the front page kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they do have female.
Yikes.
Oh yeah, look up the Anglican Journal Canada if you want to just see the most pause-worthy rag in Christianity and Christendom.
Lord have mercy.
Are you looking at it now, Lumen?
No. It's just that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just so used to, kind of, shaking my head at what I see in Catholic literature, but I was kind of taken aback. I'm like, well, I guess at least I don't see that.
Sorry, I think I cut you off there. You were saying before about finding a church.
Who's that?
I think he's talking to you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was just a lot of things kind of upset in my life. My own personal life wasn't going that well, and I was sort of still trying to find my feet as a Christian. But did I tell you last time that we baptized my son in the ocean?
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah,
but
and he's
you
just
can tell it again.
It's just that he's kind of he's got his feet on the ground. He's running. Like he doesn't have so I mean, sometimes you do the work for the next generation. I think we talk about that here sometimes. And I actually saw it in him that he's in the Anglican Church because we have just the most amazing parish. Like, I mean, there's things about it that irritate me, our refugee family that was there on the, lunch, and I don't, I'm at our lunch thing, and everybody's like signaling hard about how good and virtuous they are about that. But there are some really good traditional, strong people there, and some really good, and just a really good, in terms of a Christian community, just fabulous and growing. We're one of the only parishes that's actually growing in our diocese. We're actually not just growing by transfer, but by baptisms and on. So he's, you do the work, for the next generation. If you are kind of born in the midst of kind of brokenness, you have to kind of work your way through that, and he hopefully will set things up so that his progeny are like, even that much further down. I don't mean we're saving ourselves with our own righteousness or anything, heretical like that. But there are times, when your church is in Sodom, you do want to respond and react, and you do hope for better days. Not perfect days, not holy, righteous people that never sin, but this time of degeneracy is not, not something we need to just kind of be ho-hum about.
Yeah, and this is something I mentioned before we started the hangout tonight. This is, this is something that confronts us as Christians in the present day, when our society, our culture it really is essentially in service to Satan. It really is just on so many levels, a machine that's sending lots of souls to hell. But even when you do, get to church, when you do, when you, and even when you're, made aware of what's going on in society, as we are, even when you're, kind of, I don't know, I guess red pilled is what people usually call it. Even then, it's difficult. It's William just muted Ian.
It has to be done.
Yep.
Was I not muted? I'm sorry.
Yeah. It didn't take him long to
use his power.
Yeah, stretch his muscles. But
I think anybody can mute anybody in these. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, that's some dangerous knowledge. But yeah, I mean, even when you're made aware and you're you break out of the prison that normies are in, and because you live in this society, because you have perhaps been just and when I say perhaps, I guess I mean you have likely been involved in the soul killing lifestyles and activities that are in that society. It's difficult. Even if you're getting to mass every Sunday, and just using the example of myself, it's a struggle. And I pray the rosary every day. I pray the litany of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, pray the Angelus 3 times a day. I recently started another litany prayer to Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And I'm, I don't even watch TV. I don't, I'm not really part of this culture, except that it just surrounds me. But even then, it's still, just a lifetime of living in this culture. It takes its toll, and especially if you're, of an artistic bent, people who are, I've mentioned this several times in our Hangouts, that people who are artists, people who are creative, are just in many ways they can be weaker, and more susceptible to deviancy. To it's just part of being creative. It's part of why it's important to have a good, strong hierarchy, in your society. If you're an artist, it helps to keep those potential self-destructive and outwardly destructive as well tendencies in check. So it's it's all around us, and I see it in people who I think are genuinely trying to be good Christians. They're still, sometimes they're not even aware of it. The things that 100, 200 years ago, anyone would understand, like this isn't good. We can't do this. We can't allow this. We can't, this endangers my soul. This, and if this spreads, it endangers the souls of others. That's not quite as easy to see these days. Even if you're, trying to lead a good Christian life. And it's just the area of chastity. That's a huge one, these days. And it's something I've personally struggled with. The pornography is on demand. It's easy. And when you're when you've gotten to a point where you can listen to the Daily Show and not be aghast, and clutching your pearls and frantically searching for the 1-800 number for SPLC, whatever. But, it's just a horrible time, to try to escape this stuff, and you're, in many ways you're isolated already. If you're not actively, partaking in this community, if you're not, apologizing for it. So it's, just the phenomenon of pornography. I think for a lot of guys, it can be, an easy escape, because you just feel, isolated already. And it's, and I'm happy to say that, in the last half year, a little bit less time than that, when I've made some improvements in my physical health, because I was pretty bad off for a while. I've been able to, redouble my efforts at, constantly trying to be a better Christian, constantly trying to think about it, constantly trying to be praying, and I've been able to reinstate a healthy, chaste life, and it makes a huge difference. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling on here as usual, but this is a very important issue, I think, especially for guys in our position, that even though we might be, it's always been difficult to be a good Christian. Look at St. Augustine. But when
read the Confessions, yes.
Yeah. It's now it's and the sad thing is this is when we need good Christians. Whenever I can, I usually add some extra decades to my rosary, and I sometimes will add an extra decade for priests. I pray that we get good priests and that we deserve them. Because we get the priests that we deserve, and I pray that they're protected. Because more than ever we need it. So anyway, it's just it's a topic that's been on my mind, and it's it's you have to be careful. You have to be the people you associate with, whether in person or online. And I'm not saying you judge people and you look down on people, but you have to avoid the near occasion of sin. And if it's like if you quit drinking, you don't hang out in bars. So it's a pretty important thing for us to be thinking about these days, I think.
Our girl Faith Goldie's been putting out some pretty good tweets these days.
I don't know much about her.
Yes.
What's she saying?
Oh, she said she had one on hierarchy, like basically that heaven is a hierarchy.
Is she a Christian?
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think she's either Ortho or Catholic.
I think she's Eastern Rite Catholic.
Eastern Rite Catholic.
I'm pretty sure.
Lightning
Yeah,
Peter, kind of Catholic.
So somebody comes in, oh, well, you're talking about hierarchies. Jesus was against hierarchies, and some other guy, gave her a serious smackdown, and then I joined in too. And it's like, this is the thing. People have just been taught that Jesus is sort of the social democrat who wants to make everybody equal. Like, this is the appalling state of people's knowledge of. But this is one of the problems with, this is pretty reactionary, I know, but I think some of us are kind of reactionary. I certainly am. Anyway, and this, where democracy actually has a deleterious effect on discipleship, I should say. And I can actually kind of search that out in my own soul when I assumed that democracy was a good, that God did want kings brought down and all this kind of nonsense, right? But when you lose that hierarchy, then it does really become the cult of your personal life, and then your personal desires and drives become kind of the center of it. And there's this is a bit of a tangent, but there's this. I've been trying to quit smoking, and I pretty much have, but I still do succumb. I don't think it's.
Whoa, we got a tobaccoist in our presence.
I don't think it's a mortal sin, but I think it is definitely a vice.
I might have to think careful about inviting you to the next one of these, William.
Hey, you have Nick B. Steves. He practically works for the tobacco company. So
that's true. I know he's talked about how he's a smoker. But anyway,
his avatar is smoking man from.
It's the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who that guy is.
Yeah. So anyway, and I realized the other day when I was, having one and feeling bad about it, I realized that I'm spending way too much time thinking about myself as a sinner. And I don't know that you ever get over sin doing that. You have to certainly be forgiven, face that person, but then put that person down. Do not kind of reform that part of yourself. Strengthen the things that allow the Holy Spirit to raise you up in the things that you are strong in, rather than mucking around with this kind of sinful person who never gets better. The sinful person is forever flawed, forever broken, and we are that thing at some point right through. But anyway, it was kind of an insight I had that I'm spending too much time trying to have a conversation with this kind of self-destructive, worthless part of myself, rather than allowing God to, put me on my feet and put a new song in my mouth. This is what David says in the Psalm several times.
Yeah. It is easy to get caught up in sort of a self-flagellation, I guess.
Yeah, and it becomes the kind of the pain of it and the realness, the real feeling of it. There's strong emotions associated with it, and it's a problem with human beings is we tend to associate strong emotions with the real or the true. Sometimes it's just not true. It's just strong emotion.
It feels good, so therefore it must be good.
Or it feels horrible, therefore it must be true or good, right? Either way.
Well, I mean, that is kind of how things have become these days, where it's just all based on what sounds good or what gives you the right mental reaction. Like, I remember, if you just look at a lot of these liberals today, even like everything is based on this. I don't like this. This makes me feel bad. This must be wrong then. And it's like a really immature way to think. It's a really childish way of looking at things. Like, reality conforms to what my feelings want.
Well, I guess it sometimes approaches despair, but the feeling of hopelessness when you're trying to conquer yourself, when you're trying to conquer sin, it's an opportunity to humble yourself. It's an opportunity to give yourself to Christ, because the fact is, I mean, again, using myself as an example, there were, once I really recognized just how hellish, how nightmarish the modern world is, and how much a part of it I was, and how much it had formed me. And I really despaired of being able to take the next step that you want to take, which is to change, and then you start learning about the your ancestors, and you start to see you start to recognize how their way of life, which was diametrically opposed to our way of life, how it just makes sense. And I really for a while just you try, and you kind of remind me of this a little bit, William, with smoking, because I quit smoking too. It was a while ago, but you try, you work at it, you smoke again. It's so it is true that now more than ever, there are habits, there are characteristics that are at the core of a lot of us that you can't change. But we all know, at least intellectually, that there's one person that can change anything, and that's Christ. And that's how it works. That's and it's gradual. It's like anything else. It takes practice. But it's if you take up his yoke, if you a theme that I've been dwelling on lately is praying to love my cross, and part of that sometimes is facing the it sometimes turns into self-loathing, when you can see, like, oh, I just want to change this. I want to be better. I want to do better. And sometimes that's part of learning to love your cross, and it makes sense, because it's through your cross that you're saved. It's through Christ's passion and his cross that he came to, the glory of his resurrection. And, so that's what these things are, and it's very difficult for us. It's definitely been difficult for me to look at, the things that you struggle with. And it's not always, your own, dishonorable characteristics or shortcomings or whatever. It's sometimes, again, I've dealt with some pretty significant health issues, and coming to look at these things as something good, something desirable. It's not easy, and especially when you've grown up in the cult of egalitarianism, and but that's all of these struggles we have. They're graces that come from God, and they're opportunities, and that's how we win. We win through Christ.
Good stuff. It's a good reminder.
Amen. Oh, here's Faith Goldie's tweet. God is exclusionary and orders heaven and earth hierarchically. If you don't get this, you need to leave the United Church, in quotes, and pray for revelation. Not sure whether that last part's exactly, but, you know, she's tweeting. But, you know, she's been tweeting these kind of things, these kinds of more trad Christian-based tweeting. It's kind of interesting. I think she still has a whole schwack of followers. Yeah, 77,000 of them.
Was
And
she
they're like-
associated with Rebel Media, William?
Yes,
gone.
she
Okay.
was in the Rebel. Is she gone from it?
Yeah, she got kicked out, I think.
Yeah, that's why I
Oh,
said
because
was.
of-
That's why, because I thought I
Oh.
remembered when that happened.
She was big into that, and she was in Sun News when that was still around. I don't know if you ever watched that, Will.
I haven't had a TV for a long time, and I've never really caught them on. Yeah.
Who's still
Yeah.
even in Rebel Media? I mean, I think
Probably
Lauren
just
Southern
Ezra at this point.
Nobody that we knew. They're all Jews now.
was Lauren Southern part of that too.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
but she left on her own terms.
Okay.
How ironic that Rebel Media is you know it's all Jews now. You know, it's you know the most rebellious people in history.
Yaski Michael Jones.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. The
Yeah.
revolutionary spirit. Yeah. I didn't know that. It was, well, I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's you know, anyone who has you don't even have to be very studious about studying history, but, you know, anyone who's, you know, taken a cursory look at our histories, especially our shared histories, it makes sense. You know, it's all the goyim have jumped ship. But good for her. I didn't, you know, I'll have to check out some of her stuff.
She also tweeted something recently about she's tweeted a couple things about, you know, the replacement of Westerners, you know, white Western people by you know, foreign groups. She's had a couple good tweets about that too.
She's our girl. To some extent.
/ our girl.
Yes. / our girl /
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
She was at Charlottesville, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was there when the Charger drove. She's one of the people that was documenting the car crash.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to roll soon. I've got to get ready for the
Fine art.
art.
You're going to hear the fat lady sing.
I am.
Oh, you're going to a Heart concert? Oh.
Hey-o!
Hey-o!
I've actually been to a Heart concert, so it's not that bad.
It might be a heart attack concert. You never know.
There you go. No, Ann Wilson still sounded good last I heard her, but I heard she's gotten worse since then, though.
In terms of weight.
Well, I just mean voice, but
Oh, okay.
In terms of inches of makeup and cans of hairspray.
Dun, 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 ching, dong. Sorry.
great riff, Barracuda.
Oh, Ian knew what I was doing.
Yeah, I got it.
Classic rock posting.
Yes, yeah.
We need to do that more often.
Some good tier dad posting right there.
That's right.
And I'm not even a dad.
Yeah.
Dave's
That's
Vault.
kinda- Hello, Lightning Patriot.
Hello.
Hey, Lightning, welcome.
What's up, Chad?
Howdy.
Well, sorry, I'm just leaving. One man in.
The
one man
Chad, the
out.
Chad Lightning Patriot is replacing the Virgin Teleologic.
The version-
Sorry.
I don't think virgin should be seen as an insult, though, because, I mean,
I know, I agree 100%.
I agree.
yeah.
On the one hand, this group's talking about chastity all the time, even the secularists. I mean, I just think it's, yeah, anyway.
It's a young guys thing. You know, there's I mean, it does kind of tie in with what I was saying earlier, that, you know, even people that are trying to be traditional and Christian, you know, they struggle with this. It's Zog programming is what it is. But at the same time, you know, a lot of these guys are, you know, between, I don't know, like 18 and 23. And of course it's going to be, you know, they're going to like this stuff. It's goofy and, you know.
But I think it means, I think it's ultimately meaning novice, because it's certainly not, Chad guy's not, it's like, it's inexperience versus the man, basically. So,
yeah.
Anyway, God bless you, lads. Have a good
All right.
chat.
God bless. Godspeed.
God bless,
Have
Wayne.
a good evening.
Good to see you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Have a good night.
Yeah. So, what you been doing lately, Lightning Patriot? I guess it's been a few hangouts since you've been with us.
Well, I've been, you know, doing some stuff, networking with people, stuff like that.
Cool.
I've been doing better in, you know, just in regular life.
In what life?
You know, just like IRL.
Oh, yeah.
Just doing better all around.
Cool. You know, I thought we were going to have more people coming today, but I guess maybe not. We'll see if they show up later. But yeah, it's good to have you back.
It is. It seems like, you know, that a lot of the, you know, neo-reactionary people that kind of remember, like, Adam Wallace and Mark Citadel haven't seemed to be active as they used to.
Yeah, Adam's MIA, as far as I know. Mark is actually, Ian.
His channel got showed.
Oh, okay.
Who's dead?
Mark's.
Mark's? Oh, really? I didn't know that.
With all those really good videos he did?
Are you sure that he got showed, or did he take it down?
Maybe both.
Because, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, just, I know Mark, a while back on his blog announced he was joining Thermidor, so since then he's abandoned his private blog, and he said he was taking a break from doing Hangouts, which is why he hasn't been on here. And I did have some brief contact with him through Twitter DMs a little while ago, but I don't know exactly what's going on with Thermidor. If they're forming sort of an insular Orthodox community of some sort, I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know if that explains his absence. And as for Adam Wallace, I remember he kind of went on hiatus a while back, and somebody on Millennial Loz's Ask FM sent him a question saying that Adam Wallace is retired from politics. So I don't know if that's true or some random person, but I don't know. Maybe he's just decided he doesn't want to fight the intellectual fight online anymore.
Yeah.
He's a young guy too. Is he couldn't have even been.
I think he's only like 20 or
yeah.
I think he's like 20, 21, something like that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they're all doing well, whatever they're doing. I guess I should read Thermidor more if I want to see. I don't know if Mark's posting stuff there. I haven't kept up with them much.
He's probably in his esoteric Hyperborean circle.
Yep.
Of the Black Sun. Evelyn esoteric circle.
Yeah, wish Mark were back. It's always good when he joins these things.
Yeah.
If you were gaps like these silence things, he always has a lot to say.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of my own stuff.
Like your own,
Recently,
like those private hangouts you do.
I haven't been able to do Hangouts necessarily, but I've been just like networking with people in my area.
Okay.
So like I'm on Discord and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I've created like a regionalist chat and stuff like that.
That's great. That's important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I know that
Midwestern Chad nationalism. DDDDD.
Well, I remember I joined a couple of those Hangouts that you do, and I'm still in the little chat box for them on Hangouts, little app on the Gmail. but I haven't been able to attend very many of them. But I know that
Yeah.
like you have Delta and some of those other guys in there.
Christian Reactionary,
Yeah.
JT.
Were you there when that guy's nephew started banting him, or was that after you'd left?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, never mind. I'm not going to talk about that here, but it was a pretty funny moment for. It wasn't a live hangout. It was just a.
Yeah.
I think it was Christian Reactionary. His nephew started talking about anime or something, and well, I'm not going to get into it here, but it was pretty funny. But
Yeah,
I remember you left it. What?
Anime seems to be a pretty divisive thing, a pretty divisive issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is a very. There are, I think, certain aspects of anime which are potentially a threat to our future. I mean, I mean, it creates a sort of idealized woman and makes us chase this false image, and it creates unrealistic expectations, and I don't know, cue the Vivaldi, but
And don't forget the robots.
Weeb nationalism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waifu nationalism.
Waifu nationalism.
We need anti-dem here. He should join us.
Honestly, when I was young, I kind of had the right idea that anime is degenerate. It's some foreign chink art.
All right, don't use slurs like that. Only Louise allowed to say that.
Yeah, it's put it this way. And of course, yes, other ethnic groups will have varying in relation to us, in relation to Europeans. They'll have varying standards of what's acceptable as far as degeneracy goes. But one way to look at it, and I'm by no means an expert, is it's an aspect of modernism, and so you might find, I don't know, like I really got into comics for a while, and I really liked that story. I still haven't seen the anime version of it, but I liked the manga of Akira, and it wasn't, as far as I remember, there was no degeneracy in it, and it was just, it was kind of a, from a Japanese angle, obviously, it was kind of a, almost an archetypal European, struggle between right and wrong, and the hero and the anti-hero, and so I mean, but again, I'm not very knowledgeable about anime, and a lot of what I see, even on the alt-right, and I guess this kind of goes back to the topic of even we're in such disarray that even when we're trying to get back to our roots and our traditions, we've been severed from them for so long that you see these anime. I see some of these anime avatars, and I'm like, come on, it's a so yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I know there's a couple that aren't too bad. But yeah, I mean, you got to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a part of the culture to some degree, and I'll accept that. The memes and stuff like that. I'm fine with the memes, but the problem is that just complete, like, unironically, kind of like a cultural thing. I mean, there's this sort of softness that comes with it. I don't know. I kind of went through an anime period myself.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There's this sort of softness of the art. It's like, I don't know how to put it. It makes you want to be a materialist, basically. And there's nothing really in depth about it.
Yeah, and
it's all show.
Well, ultimately, it is a cultural reflection of a different people, and I mean, there has always been, among artists and among those who appreciate art, there's always been some degree of fascination with, exotic forms of art and culture that we have, exploring those. Although in the past, they've been, we didn't have the internet, obviously. You'd have to travel or you'd have to know someone with a collection or whatever. But I don't know, like just off the top of my head, more recently, there was a comic for Solomon Kane, which, it was, I really liked it. It was this hardcore Christian. He's Protestant too, and I'm Catholic. Just like, unapologetically, quoting scripture and just, going after demons, and that's more of a reflection of who we are as a people.
Yeah. The two ones I did watch and I kind of liked to some degree, although it was filled obviously with varying forms of degeneracy, was Helsing and Trinity Blood.
Van Helsing, like
obviously had a more degenerate bent to it, the modern one. There was actually an earlier one that was not as bad, but it was all, Protestant Anglicanism, the evil papist, the evil Nazi papists.
We only have 5 years now. I think anime really brings in. It really.
And then it was like vampire slaying, but it had this weird thing about vampires being converted and then killing vampires. It was interesting. And then there was the Trinity Blood's like, it's mostly Catholic based, aside from the fact that they have women bishops. For some reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never got into anime myself, so every time it comes up, it was just like right over my head. I don't know if you guys listen to Beyond the Wall, but
yes, I listened to
brought it up a few times.
Podcast.
Yeah, it's good, but every time anime comes,
what is your favorite anime?
The only
yes, every time.
I honestly,
the only anime series I've ever watched in its entirety was Victorian Romance Emma, because Anti-Dem mentioned it on Ask FM. It's really good. It takes place in Victorian England.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that there is this sort of, how to put it, like historical fiction or alternate history, sort of just kind of artistic sort of bent to anime. Where like they'll just sort of twist the time sometimes, where they'll like mix maybe a Victorian thing with different stuff. It'll be hard to judge when the events are taking place.
That's what I do with my stories. I put them in an ambiguous time period.
I mean, I do have my alternate history sort of fanfic things that feel when General Patton leads the National Progressive Party to create a fascist United States and launches massive Autobahn projects and then conquers China and the Soviet Union for massive living space, and then launches a massive space program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm listening to my vinyl singles while surfing the internet and talking on my cell phone. Yeah.
You're a man of many talents.
Oh, well. That was not clever, Lumen.
Internet Ian.
No, but seriously, like, yeah, I don't talk about my stuff too much in public just because it's private. But,
Yeah.
I talk about it with Lumen privately, though, so he knows all about it.
I'm your
confidant.
Yep, I'm your advisor.
Pretty much.
Your consultant.
Yeah.
I'm here to scare you, and make sure you see what lies ahead of you in the future, because I'm older. It's like, don't make the same mistakes I made, son.
Yeah, I won't. Hopefully.
Yeah, speaking of, comics and kind of different time periods and European themes and religion. Any of you guys ever get into any of Mike Mignola's stuff? Guy that came up with Hellboy.
No, can't say that I did.
It's really good.
What is Hellboy again?
He's a demon. He's actually, he came from hell. He was we lost Lightning Patriot, but welcome back.
Hey.
He
Error.
he was, in the story arc, he was summoned by the Nazis, of course.
I think I remember this guy.
Yeah, but he was adopted by this American scientist, kind of like a paranormal investigator / scientist who's a traditional Catholic. So he was raised. He was actually raised Catholic, and but it's just it's a Mike Mignola. I think he just read a lot of European folklore. And like, for instance, what's her name, Baba Yaga, the Russian and Slavic kind of boogeyman. It's pretty good stuff, and of course, as it got successful and in recent times when there were spin-offs, and it fell into other hands, it became more degenerate, of course. But it's the older stuff is really good as far as comics go.
Yep.
Speaking of comics, did you realize there's a television series now based on Archie comics called Riverdale?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, but isn't it like...
It's like a teen drama kind of thing.
It's like a murder mystery.
Yeah, I was reading about it the other day, and apparently that is what it is.
I'm sure it's degenerate.
Yeah. Just from reading the description, it does seem a bit degenerate. But it's interesting that apparently the guy who I was reading about, I guess one of the guys who's produced the show is some Hispanic guy who back in, I actually remember this, back in like 2003 or something like that, he wrote a stage play about Archie revealing that he's gay, and Archie Comics intervened and said, we don't want this.
Of course.
And so he had to change it for legal reasons. He had to like rewrite the play or like make it about some generic character that wasn't affiliated with Archie. And just
Arthur. I'm Arthur. And I'm super.
But now he's like actually a writer for the real Archie Comics, and they let him he's like a creative director of some sort, and it's like, wow, so first you make a pozzed version of the real thing and then they hire you. And so yeah, Archie is pretty degenerate nowadays. Yeah, very progressive.
Pozzed.
Yeah. And they have Archie now being married to the black girl from Josie and the Pussycats and having a kid with her and stuff. And yeah.
This is
years ago I was at a bookstore and I saw this like comic book and shows them kissing on the cover. I'm like, okay, yeah, no. So like this is what they're selling the kids these days. I remember reading Archie when I was a kid and liking it back when it was more wholesome. But now, yeah.
Funny how that works. Some wholesome thing from the 50s or whenever it was started, and now it started
way back in the 40s even.
Oh, even then. Now it's gay interracial murder mysteries.
Pretty much. Yeah. I remember seeing some website, they published there's actually a Archie comic story from back maybe in the 70s or something, where the whole story is about a scandal when it appears that I think it's Betty and Archie are out driving somewhere, and then I think they accidentally drive the car into the lake or something, and then their clothes are all wet, so they're like in some cabin, like wrapped in blankets, drying off, and their parents find out and think that like they've slept together or something, and so there's like this big scandal about that, and it was like posted on the internet like, can you believe this was in Archie Comics back in 1975 or whatever? And it seems like such a, like that's that was their idea of being edgy back then, I guess. So, yeah, but I think it's a shame that everything's getting paused.
Well, it kind of, it should, you know,
get paused now.
yeah. No, it should, you know, give those of us who are creative, you know, who might, you know, under other circumstances, you know, be producing content, you know, that for people, it should give us, you know, pause for thinking about, you know, what we're going to do, you know, how we're going to, you know, I try to be optimistic and think about, you know, am I going to, you know, because clearly content producers will be needed, you know, when we turn things around. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but we should be thinking about it. You know, we all know what's wrong. We can, you know, we can name the Bergs and the Steins and whatever, and you know, the different franchises and the media companies and the shows and the publications, whatever. But, you know, we should be thinking, I think, about how we're going to counteract.
We have to build things from the ground up. We have to take everything back.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. What I was saying with the Boy Scouts. I mean, I used to be a Boy Scout, you know, and I kind of left before it got too degenerate. But
yeah, the thing is, like,
we have all these institutions taken away from us. I mean, I go to a Catholic school, but it's like, it's not paused, but it's like they peddle some
Catholic college.
No, Catholic high school.
Okay. Oh, you're still in high school? Yeah. God bless you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm planning on going to college, but yeah, it's like, you know, this was like a perfectly white school, and then the principal came in and ruined it by bringing a bunch of inner city nogs. White middle class high school, and it's like, you know,
oh, were you the one who?
You got to give the black man some help there.
Were you the one who wrote that article for Amron, Lightning Patriot?
I did not. I wish I was an Amron.
No, did you read that Amron article a while back talking about a case like that where there was this nice, mostly white Catholic school, and then the principal wanted to have a basketball program there, so he imported all these guys from the inner city, and they were.
It wouldn't surprise me, but that wasn't the reason. It was like, you know, we need to be diverse. We need to give, you know, the lesser people a chance, you know.
The lesser people.
Oh, how dare I'm totally not a.
The poor dears just can't help themselves.
Yeah. It's because Whitey took all their opportunity there, Goy. It's equality.
And it's a super.
It's racial justice. I always find it interesting how, because like a lot of like leftist insert word insert word that's similar to black will usually call themselves like, we're doing racial justice. It's racial injustice. You're stealing from us what is rightfully ours and taking it away. It's injustice.
Well, it's also injustice to the people that are, you know, putatively being helped, because it's number one, it's saying to them, well, you know, even if they're told otherwise, and even if they believe otherwise, it's telling them, you know, well, you couldn't make it into this school. You know, you're not good enough, but we're gonna take care of that for you. And then, you know, when, you know, and I finished my higher education older, you know, much older than most people, and I saw this going on. You know, then you have these people in here, and, you know, through no fault of their own, this is who they are. You know, they're in this situation. You know, college used to be, almost like a intelligence filter. You get there if you're intelligent. You get there if you're, if you have.
It was considered a privilege for those who had the intellectual capacity to do it.
Yeah, and
I mean that's why you have college applications and all this stuff, but now
it's
outdated. I mean, college right now is just an extended high school.
Well, it's it's an extension of the cathedral. It's an extension of it's part of the the long march through the institutions from cultural Marxism. But it's also a grave disservice to these people that you're putting into these schools, because they
can be doing better things.
Yeah, and I mean, you can even remove the racial angle, and it's the same thing. When with white kids, when they, when we're in a culture where everyone is supposed to go to school. Everyone should have the opportunity to go to school,
regardless of their sort of natural class or
or
what they're meant to do in life. For example, you could, and this is the whole trade sort of argument in our circle. Some people
that's what I was getting
trades.
At. Yeah. There used to be trade schools, and there's and a lot of these kids will leave these trade schools. They're not in debt, and they'll be making a lot more money than someone who earned a humanities degree and has to be a busboy or work at Starbucks or something. And they're doing what they're good at. They're happy. They can have a family, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's so you're doing a disservice to people that but this is social engineering. This is Edward O. Wilson, the father of evolutionary psychology, which was known as psychobiology, I believe. I don't remember, but he said, communism is a great system for ants. If you're
I remember that.
Yeah,
who is it? E.O. Wilson said that.
Yeah. Edward O. Wilson. Yep. And this is social engineering. It creates chaos, and it's by design. It creates chaos.
But what's funny about all that is how you mentioned that you're doing a disservice to people by just giving them stuff and telling them you're not good enough to make it, and that's why you have now these professional rent seekers. When you open up that, you're basically making rent seeking into a profession, which is what these people do, and it's does anyone ever stop and think that this doesn't help anybody? That all they're doing is basically to say, give me this, give me that, give me that. It's what does this actually produce? It produces nothing. I remember...
Well, it's usury.
Yep.
Well, I guess so, yeah.
And
I remember on Twitter seeing one of these...
Money.
Yeah. On Twitter, there was this... on one of these hashtags I was trolling where they were talking about, the dreamers and all that. They're, showing, some... image, which is a collage of different dreamers, and one of them was a white woman, and I'm oh, they're talking about a white person, and she's somebody from Belarus or something, and says, and underneath it says what they do, and it says activist. It's oh, activists, just what we need, more activists in our country doing the rent-seeking Americans won't. I mean,
we need to stop importing all of these liberals.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we should just cut off immigration completely. So maybe for South African refugees.
And total ethno-state.
Well, yeah, but we're not here to LARP about that.
Yeah, I mean, we need, immigration needs to become, net negative for a while. And just to, because even when, and I don't even want this, but even when, even pre-1965 Hart-Celler, Ted Kennedy, invite the whole third world. Even then, when you would have, say, in the...
You had immigration quotas.
Well, what I'm getting at is you would have maybe quotas, but what would happen is, you'd get this group coming in, whatever, maybe it was Slavic people, maybe it was Jews, maybe it was Italians, whatever. But there would always be a period, where there was no immigration or limited, and this was this was meant to encourage assimilation, and but we're so far beyond that. We're that it needs to be negative for a while. It's people that are here need to be encouraged to go back, and you can do that a number of different ways without even being while still actually being Christian, without being inhumane. And
well, I think how we're going to take back our country is just simply going to be a matter of how much influence we can create over time. The idea that we're going to have a political party and win an election and then do everything is an inverted way. You have to kind of build things from the ground up through networking and hard work.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think political systems are going to save us.
Yeah, democracy is it's not going to.
It's a false god.
Yeah.
It truly is the god that
equality.
failed.
Yeah. As Hoppe would say.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically kind of what a conclusion I reached a few months ago is, I kind of LARPed as an anarcho-capitalist in some ways because in a way you're kind of right that, you should basically create your own state or whatever, your new, country or feudal society through we need, the government, above all, needs to be deregulated because it's a deadly force, the federal government. It's too deadly a force. It has to be destroyed because it's a force of tyranny.
Yeah, and it's a foreign force as well, and it's
yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's going to happen. I mean it's unfortunately it's a matter of how bloody it's going to be, but
yeah, and when, and that's kind of, I think most of us in our circles understand this, but my understanding of how do you overthrow tyranny or how do you get out of tyranny is that you go from the ground up. You build up sort of the a sort of, I want to say like a net or a scaffold. So like when the tyranny, when it finally breaks away, you'll be ready. Everything will be in place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost preparing for a storm to come. Like, the storm's coming, but, you're not just going to sit there and say, okay, the storm's just magically not going to harm anybody or anything. It's like a storm. It's like a natural disaster, an impending natural disaster. You have to prepare for it. You have to make sure that, the area is evacuated, that, all the buildings are secure and stuff like that.
Well, I've mentioned on here that I think, one of the initial sort of things that we're going to have to start doing, and it'll be an ongoing thing, is, gathering in communities and
yep.
Depending on when the unrest that will be centered in urban areas, starts to spill out, that might.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that November the 4th thing.
What's happening November 4th?
Antifa's planning to have an armed revolution.
Yeah, that's not going to. It's going to be a little while. I mean,
what are you talking about? This Antifa revolution?
Yeah, they said they're
planning on having a day of anarchy on the 4th, and it seems to be very well planned. So, my advice is it's on a Saturday, so maybe just be a little bit prepared for something if it gets out of hand if you're near an urban area. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is one of the first things we're going to have to do is start gathering, loosely at first, in areas where we can help each other and be there for each other, and
My first piece of advice, I mean, this is kind of what I was talking about in the chat, the live chat below, is, for us Catholics, my advice is repair your parishes, encourage traditional liturgy and sort of help, the clergy, but also engage in both the clergy and the congregation as a whole. Because like, for example, I go to a church that's fairly conservative, especially, we have after Mass, the priests and the congregation, we just kind of chat. And, there's a lot of fairly good, decent right-wing people there who are very much on our side. And I've met, a lot of, people who are sort of red-pilled on this, So it's like, it's just a matter of engagement. And, these communities are out there. You just got to, go to your parish and become a part of the church more deeply. This is why I'm in, various youth groups and stuff like that. I've networked with a few people. Yeah. I've gone so far as to actually, join a fraternity, let's just say.
Knights of Columbus?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm actually a knight. I haven't gone in a long time. Largely due to illness, but at least my council, it's not not traditional enough, and
yeah.
But it is, it's absolutely better than nothing. It's when you're any chance you get to put your faith into action is an opportunity you should take. If you can do it, if it's within your means, and this is something that we'll need to be ready to do again when things start getting crazy. For our brethren who don't have religion. We're going to need to be there for them because it's
bring them to church, bring them to Mass, bring them to the liturgy.
I mean, right now it's good to if you can do that, but once things really get bad, that's when people are really going to need it. It's
and you have to prepare. That's something we have to prepare for. The evacuation of the people from the from how to put it, like the judgment, try to be merciful, especially towards those who've turned away from the faith for so long.
Yeah, we're absolutely. This is another issue. Once things
escalate.
Yeah, exactly. Once things get to the point where, it's a matter of survival. It's going to be important to, in as much as we can, to promote, being forgiving, being merciful, because so many people just they don't know any better, and it's the same.
Yeah, it's so easy. They're tempted into this, modernity, and I am very willing, I would be very merciful to anyone who, repents at that, that hour of judgment. I don't know how to put it, but like when shit hits the fan, a lot of people become just immediately woken, and they're trying to look for something. And you should be there with that hand of mercy to protect them.
Right, because I mean, like it's there's no reason
the
at this point.
the prodigal son.
I mean, they're surrounded by it, right? At this point, there's no reason for them to, I guess, change. But but yeah, but it's just because of they're constantly being bombarded in their daily lives, and so at this point, there's no reason for there to be any change in them. But when things change, when, you know, as you said, it hits the fan, you got to be patient with people, and you got to recognize that a lot of people, it wasn't from any inherent badness in them, I don't think.
Yeah, you know, the sheep, you know.
Yeah.
The lost sheep.
The prodigal children.
Yeah. Prodigal children, we have to be like that, you know, father, and, you know, forgive them, and, you know, in a sense, hold a feast by, you know, having them with open arms, and, you know, that feast of, you know, mutual protect, or like that, or you know, unity of, you know, coming back literally into the family.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that there's going to be a there's all this, you know, pent up rage at this point, you know, in some cases, you know, years old, that, you know, that there's going to be this desire for a reckoning. And, you know, it's not something that's going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't stop it completely from happening. It's going to happen, you know, like whatever people, big names in the media. I'm talking about people who are seen as traitors. But in as much as we can, we should make sure that, because this is what happens, you know, you know, when the mob is finally let loose, you know, and, you know, when the Saxon begins to hate, there's, you know, and it acts in concert, you know, rather than as individuals. You know, there's a lot of destruction that can come of that, and we're going to need to do whatever we can to make sure that it's not, you know, some, you know, your brother-in-law who, you know, wears one of those dumb pink hats, or, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, these people, you know, need to be shown some mercy. And that's part of what I think is important about starting to gather together in communities. When we can gather in, especially communities of faith, we can hopefully be kind of a buffer in between, you know, the rage, which is to be expected, again, you know, of the mob, and these people who finally get, even people in Antifa, you know, it's like, you know, sadly.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know.
Sometimes this is what it takes to bring people to reason. Is
I remember, you know, I was listening. Have you listened to Rebel Yell?
I've listened to it a couple of times.
Yeah, the recent episode, they actually had this Native American guy on, and he was like within Antifa, and then just left because he just saw how, you know, horrible it was.
Yeah, I listened to that. That was interesting.
Yeah, I also know a friend of mine who's now in the discerning for the priesthood in the Jesuit order, who was like a socialist. He knew Antifa, but never really joined them. But he kind of became woke by, you know.
Did you see where Steven Crowder infiltrated Antifa? He sent one of his guys in there.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the November the 4th thing. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that had anything to do with Steven Crowder. But I have
Wait,
seen,
what are you talking about?
Well, you know Steven Crowder, the conservative video
guy?
Yeah,
I used to listen to him before he got too, you know, revisionist.
America is not a nation, it's an idea.
I'm totally fine with gays. I have nothing wrong against gays.
Yeah, it's a really false stereotype that all those conservatives hate gay people. Antifa is trying to start a communist revolution. They don't like freedom. I don't know what you say.
They hate us because of our freedom.
Just remember, the war in Iraq was defensible. Okay.
That's why I was so eager to jump on the alt-right, was because it was like the only somewhat conservative, community on the internet that just like rejected the social revisionism of conservatism, where like they will, economics, they'll just ramble about free market economics and then just not really care about social issues.
Yeah.
It should be the other way around to some degree.
I mean, I grew up in the 90s back when social issues were still a big thing. Like, I mean, I guess they did sort of put up some opposition to gay marriage, just kind of token opposition. Looking back, it felt like they didn't oppose it as much as they really could have. But
yeah, and that was the issue because, what did steer me in this direction was that I just saw how vicious the culture war was and how viciously they hated anybody who, for example, just opposed gay marriage or opposed abortion or drugs, and I just kind of became more militant about that stuff. Like an authoritarian conservative, and then I tried I found it interesting that like I just kind of became frustrated over libertarianism and revisionist conservatives who kind of lean to like, I'm economically conservative but socially progressive, and then I would basically say,
anybody like me.
You know what? I'm economically progressive and socially conservative. How about that?
I say I just want what works best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was telling Lumen this recently, but I've recently started to feel like all these labels when it comes to political ideology, like I don't even really care about.
They're mostly meaningless.
Well, yeah.
I mean that's actually the reason
like,
anarcho-capitalism and National Bolshevism are actually like just there, because they're more or less ways to sort of transcend mere ideology. Because anarcho-capitalism is like, okay, so then it's not actually anarchy because you can't really, it's simply a way to sort of transcend that the state is legitimate, or the current state is legitimate. And like, okay. I think I haven't read Hoppe, but I remember people sort of phrasing stuff from Hoppe that seems like he was arguing for like a return to monarchy through anarcho-capitalism or feudalism, something of that sort. And then, like with National Bolshevism, it's like, I don't care about your rights. Your rights don't matter.
Okay, well, we're not. I don't really want to get into all these like weird esoteric, obscurantist ideologies. They're just
actually. I think most people who are Nazbols, the official thing is a rejection of victimhood politics.
Well, I think Louis is a Nazbol. You can ask him.
Yes.
But what I was saying was I really have come to like feel like I don't even care much about what political ideology you label me as. Like I'm more interested in just being a faithful Christian. That's what it means.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, so like
however, the problem seems to be is that if you, I don't know how to put it, but you have to kind of, I honestly, like, for example, I'll just simply call myself a fascist Catholic, just to be edgy, because they kind of complement each other. Fascism tended to be more Catholic in its orientation.
Well, that was
and
kind of a concession to the people, wasn't it, as far as Mussolini saw it?
Well, it seems to be just simply like Catholicism. It doesn't really care where something is. It's perennial. So it'll just simply take the truth where it is. And it varies, person to person, just like you have like, the Eastern churches, the Latin Rite and stuff like that. And even like, for example, I know that like different nationalities, like Poles and French, and Italians will have like different traditions within their faith and stuff like that. And it kind of varies with fascism. You know, you have National Socialism, you have, Italian style, you have Phalangism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
National Bolshevism for Russia.
Yeah.
National Libertarianism for the South.
Maybe. I guess if yes, the Rebel Yell guys.
Yeah, basically National Libertarianism.
Well, the thing is when, when a people have been so long severed from their natural organic identity, there's nothing, it's not like you can just, look to your father or your grandfather. And so, and especially...
You need futurism.
Yeah, especially when you're, isolated, and there are all these ideas, and you're a young guy, you don't have a lot of experience, and, but that something's
good.
Terribly, well, that something's terribly wrong, and you're in desperate need of some sort of hope, and I guess in a lot of cases,
you find a new good. You find something that carries you along through a love of Christ. I mean, that's kind of if you look within specifically fascism and third positionism talks about this, where it's like you embrace, you have some sort of recognition of the past, but you're also forward looking. You take any good that comes in the future. Futurism. Like, for example, like the for example, I had this tendency of it's going to be the problem with conservatism is this reactionary view that we're just going to simply go back to the 80s or the 50s when, that's the problem with a lot of, conservatism. And even in our circles, people who call themselves monarchists and reactionaries who just want to simply put, the whatever the Bourbon claimant is back on the throne. It just isn't going to happen. So you're going to have, a forward-looking ideology that takes, that can sort of, rebirth the nation, create a new hierarchy, and that's what turned me to fascism.
Okay.
Is that America itself, a lot of the positive aspects are reflected of this, the Second Amendment, this sort of adherence to European traditions that can create this,
Yeah. Well, Lumen, are you saying you have to go soon?
Oh, I'm just kind of
I know you.
I'm edging closer to. I'm usually in bed by now.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you up too late. Seems like we've been going about 2.5 hours. Just think we should wrap up. I don't know if anyone else is coming.
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
All right. Well, I guess I'll wrap up then. Thank you for William Scott. Thank you, Lumen Saul. Thank you, Moose Norseman. Thank you, Thomas Jones. Thank you, Lightning Patriot. And thank you to our 4 viewers who are still out there. We're glad to have you in the text chat. And even though not everything you said was all that interesting, but yeah, sick burn, I know. But some of you guys did say some interesting things, and it's definitely good to just chat with you while we're chatting here. And I think it's okay hangout. Not one of the absolute best, but it was pretty good. I think we had some good.
Are we offline now?
No, we're not. So does it say live in the corner there for yours?
Yeah. Okay,
yeah. So it means we're still live, but
oh crap.
Yeah, we haven't gone off the air. You've been live the whole time. But anyway, yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Godspeed, everyone.
God bless everyone.